So we have something very serious happening here to mankind, something that is out of nature, out of context, and something that can only affect us in an extremely negative way. But these, again, utter changes are merely the mirror, the projection of what is happening to an individual within. The original tweaking of our DNA has caused all of this. That, compounded by the earth changes, so severely traumatized the human race that we have the ego replacing the self as the center of consciousness. We have the masculine proclivities becoming dominant. All these atrocities that we see in the so-called modern world can be traced back to an origin. But this origin has been concealed. And the reasons for all of these traumas and horrors of the world has also been concealed. You put religious in front of us and a God, and people stop thinking. We have this phenomena in ancient literature, and we also have modern questions arising as to the reptilians. After the pole shift, the Atlanteans continued a seek and destroy policy against their nemesis, the Lemurians. Despite having scant technological hardware, they also managed to continue some primitive genetic experimentation. The fauna of the Earth was studied, and eventually alien DNA was crossed with that of several species of creature. It was found that the reptile possessed the qualities that the alien masters of Atlantis had desired all along. So after you've failed twice with humanoids, and you know that going back to the drawing boards again is not probably going to work, and you don't even have the technology anymore, you don't have the super technologies and the computers and all the laboratory equipment that you once had. That's all several fathoms beneath these new oceans that have appeared. What do you do? The ancient legends say that they went back to the drawing boards for the third time, and this time they said, listen, why do we even deal with a humanoid in the first place? That's been nothing but a cause of problems from day one. And there's plenty of other life forms and species on this planet. And perhaps they had done like that on their own planet. So they experimented on all the fauna of the Earth and crossed their alien DNA with many of the species of the fauna, including the reptile. And that is where we have the theory of the reptilians. The reptilians are not from other planets. They do not come from other solar systems and visit the Earth. They're actually made right here on the Earth. All mysteries, all history, all mythology is filled with images of the strange births of the unicorn and the minotaur and the centaur and whatnot. And we have the mythology of the siren coming out of the Greek mythology. Of course, we have the symbolism of the dragon again. But these are dragons who have the gift of speech and the gift of wisdom even. Clement, in his apocalyptic fragment, writes, "And on earth shall be monsters, a generation of dragons of men, and likewise of serpents." David Fidelier, in his Jesus Christ, the Son of God, writes, "Delphi was also known as Pytho because before the coming of Apollo, the site was haunted by a monstrous serpent or dragon." And from the Babylonian legend of creation, we read that men with bodies of birds of the deserts, human beings with the faces of ravens, these the gods created, and in the earth the gods created for them a dwelling. In the midst of the earth they grew up and became great, and increased in number. This legend is talking about that not only were these beings created, but they were created in laboratories perhaps beneath the earth. And somebody would say, well listen, if there are these reptilians, how come we don't see them walking around today? These individuals, because they also possessed alien DNA, could look quite humanoid, because the original aliens, as we said, were not serpent looking. They were humanoid looking. Ostensibly you could walk past one in the street. And some of the reptilians would have been born like that also. Though they had reptilian DNA, they could look quite human, and some looked very reptilian. So the ones that looked too reptilian, they were phased out or moved into caverns beneath the earth. Some people say they still are there. And that is why even up to the Middle Ages, you always hear about the hero having to go and prove his manhood by knocking on the door of some dragon and do battle or conquest with some hideous monster. So right up and almost until modern times, history confirms that such beings existed. And again, from Babylon, we have architecture, sculptures, bas-reliefs, images, sculptures showing hybrid animals and hybrid creatures. Here on the left is a phoenix-type bird, the Babylonian eagle gods. On the right is a reptilian lizard female with her offspring. We have cave paintings of erect, standing, bipedal lizard-type beings. One of the greatest American scholars in this subject, Professor J.J. Hurtak, says, "In our research, we have come across statuary of very grotesque beings who, according to the Indian and shamanic tradition, went into the earth at the time of a great cataclysm." So from all over the world, we not only have the stories of heroes and gods and great conflicts, but again we have the hybrid being, the hideous monster. We have suppression of facts regarding the skulls and skeletons of these types of being. Slowly it's coming to light. G. Warren Shufelt, a researcher, discovered the underground tunnels beneath Los Angeles, which the Hopi Indians had for centuries believed were inhabited by a lizard race over 5,000 years before. Robert E. Dickoff, in his book Agartha, tells of a Tibetan monk who learned that an alliance of reptilians and human black magicians were causing chaos and destruction in the surface societies by projecting malevolent energy fields into people's minds, using what we call witchcraft, the manipulation of energy. Dickoff says that the monk led 400 warrior monks into the caverns to do battle with this serpent cult. And in Ireland again, the Celtic legends, we have the Fomorian race. This is the earliest prehistoric visitors to Ireland before any of the other races got there. And as we learned earlier, the Fomori means giants, but it also derives from a term meaning those from under the sea. And if you read Celtic mythology, you'll actually come across statements of the Fomori and realize how the gods had to fight them. And there's descriptions of these beings, descriptions of them, descriptions of their king, description of their heroes or so-called warriors. It makes fascinating reading. In the Emerald Tablets of Hermes, we read that only by magic could they be discovered. Only by sound could their faces be seen. But you know, the masters were mighty in magic, able to lift the veil from the face of the serpent, able to send him back to his place. Came they to man and taught him the secret, the word that only man can pronounce. Swift then they lifted the veil from the serpent and cast him forth from the place among men. Yet, be aware, the serpent still liveth in a place that is open, at times to the world. Unseen they walk among thee in places where the rites have been said. Again, as time passes onward, shall they take the semblance of man. Speak I of ancient Atlantis. Speak of the days of the kingdom of shadows. Speak of the coming of the children of shadows. Out of the great deep were they called by the wisdom of the earthman. In the form of man they moved amongst us, but only to sight were they as men. Serpent-headed when the glamour was lifted, crept they into councils, taking form that were like unto men, slaying by their arts the chiefs of the kingdoms, taking their form and ruling over man, to destroy man and rule in his place. Here we have an interesting Mayan picture of a god on the left with some kind of weapon and a shield coming to do combat. But if we study the image on the right-hand side, we will see that it's a large green serpent that has a man in his mouth. There's a large green serpent devouring a human being. If we study this corporate logo from the Italian company Alfa Romeo, we not only find a Knights of Malta or Knights of Columbus, Knights Templar cross on the left, but we find, strikingly, the very same symbol on the right. A green serpent devouring a human being with a crown above the serpent's head. And curiously, Italian Prime Minister Berlusconi has exactly that image in his garden. A large black serpent with a crown devouring a human being. And many corporate logos feature the symbol of the serpent, either in a designer abstract way or in a much more clear way, all throughout the world. In fact, the word Pepsi actually means serpent in Egyptian. In Egyptian, they used to scare their kids by saying, Pepsa will get you, or Apep, and Pepsi was the name of the devil in Egyptian. In this Origins and Oracles series, the program entitled Subversive Use of Sacred Symbolism goes into this in a great deal of depth. And we might ask, who is protecting us from those supposed to be protecting us? Here's the symbol of the Marine Corps with a large green dragon in the motif. And many, many features, many programs, not only for adults but also for children, and many movies extensively feature the symbol of the lizard or the reptilian. One could do a 5-hour program on that alone. Many involve not only the symbol of the dragon or the serpent, but also of the Masonic pyramid. In the movie Conan the Barbarian with Arnold Schwarzenegger, we actually see one of the heroes or anti-heroes of the show actually turning himself into a lizard. This film is situated clearly in pre-Diluvian times. The whole motif of the movie is to situate it in prehistoric periods. But we find it in much of our modern context, in music. We find the bestial symbols being used in the music business and in the corporate world today. Dick Gregory, the famous comedian, says, "Pay attention to Hollywood movies very carefully, for they normally tell you in a subliminal and occult way what they're going to do." Of course, we noted earlier that the caduceus of Hermes is the worldwide symbol for the medical profession. But here the World Health Organization uses clearly the symbol of the serpent. And in fact, our symbol for money, the American dollar bill, the symbol is this: 2 parallel lines vertically piercing the letter S. But in fact, that is a very ancient symbol. Here in a table of ancient symbols, we find the dollar sign, or what looks like the dollar sign, but that sign was originally known as a scourge. Now, if you look up the word scourge in a dictionary, it will tell you that it is a whip or a bond or a lash for brutalizing and keeping people in order, for keeping slaves in order. The scourge of the worlds. Now, the reptilians that possess and control many of the corrupt world leaders who engage in pedophilia and ritual murder for the same reason. Having access to precise genealogical records, they know who to seek out as victims, those innocent that are of the Lemurian bloodline specifically. This is the answer to much of what lies behind the exposés of Kathy O'Brien, Arizona Wilder, Bryce Taylor, and others who have come forth to reveal what they have seen and experienced behind the corridors of power. The hybrid reptilians were created to seek out and destroy the Lemurians on behalf of their alien masters. This was like their day job. This process has not ceased in ancient times, but still goes on today.